Hi guys, I'm Bill Holcomb, and in today's beginner's watercolor tutorial, we're painting this beautiful surf sunset scene in watercolor. Golden skies, rolling waves, and that peaceful beach vibe, all using simple beginner-friendly techniques. So grab your brushes and let's paint watercolors. I start with my mop brush and I have some clear water. I have a ring lightly with pencil for the sun, and I paint around that with some light yellow. Now, because the surfer will be in silhouette, you can go over the surfer and some of the waves that surround the surfer. But leave those waves just about these level of his legs. They will be painted in darker later. Then I've got a flat brush and I put some Windsor yellow in there, quite strong, from my pan of paints, because I want those to show up quite clearly later on. I'm using a number 12 brush now, and I'm laying in some of the orange color, fusing that in with the yellow. Then I'm making this strong bands of color. I want this sky to be really dramatic. That's why I'm painting in from the pans of color with the Scarlet Lake, using my little flat brush. Once again, coming right down towards the legs of the surfer. Then with my number 12 brush, I've gone into some clear Windsor blue at the very top of the sky. So this sky is bands of different color. It's going to be quite dramatic. And let those fuse in, joining into each other slightly. Now, as far as the sun is concerned, later on we will be doing some lifting around the sun to make that more realistic. I'm laying in some blue here over the yellow, and because the yellow is quite strong, you could argue that I could have used an even more intense blue. But never mind, it's a colourful painting. I think it will still work. Then more bands going on here and there, leaving little bits of light in between with the paper coming through. And then that darker version of blue right at the top of the sky. Just make that sky as interesting as possible with those different bands. And then we'll be drying off with a tissue at the edges before we use the hairdryer to totally dry off. There we are, it's dried off. Now I'm using a brush that we would normally use for oils. It's a bristle brush, and I'm laying down clear water around the edge of the sun, and then a nice clean tissue to lift. So we have a hazy feel to the edges of the sun, where they meet the colours of the sky. Then we have a series of waves around the surfer. These are going to be quite dark for a good contrast. And you'll see later on the ocean, beyond the surfer, that we'll be doing some further bands of wave in the ocean. At this stage, we're very much thinking of it as an underpainting, on this part of the ocean. So we're starting light and we will get darker. There'll be some more crashing waves and foam as we get closer and closer to the shoreline. That's why I'm now breaking up those little wave actions. Darkening that blue, you can use some Scarlet Lake or some alizarin crimson as you wish, they both work. I'm carefully painting around the surfboard, leaving the white of the paper. Now later on there will be an exception of using some white, opaque white, for some of the spray from the waves. Normally I just use the white of the paper, but on this occasion we will need to use some of the white opaque. My number 12 brush has got a good point to it, that's why I'm using it. So you could use one if you have a good point. So continue on the wave action as it comes towards the shoreline, dropping in your light blue and leaving the various gaps here and there for foam and crashing waves and so forth. And the closer it is to the beach, you darken that. This also helps push the eye up into the painting. So it's a painting with lots of action, lots going on. And then I've got my flat brush and I'm just shaping up different various ripples and strands in the water, leaving those white areas that will receive some opaque white here and there later, especially the spray from the surfboard. So with this flat brush over some of the white areas, that's some underpainting going on, and they will help with various shadows once we lay down the white. This is quite a dramatic painting compared to other tutorials that I've done, just for variation and interest. Number of people have asked, say, hey Bill, can you do some surfing paintings? That's why I'm doing this one today. And we do like to receive your comments and suggestions, so please feel free to do so. You might suggest certain subjects that you would like to see a tutorial for, and if we can oblige, we will do so. Once again, lots of underpainting going on for crashing wave areas. Dark under the surfboard and a little bit of shadow going on under there. And later there'll be a little bit of shadow coming in from the surfer. Dry that off with your hairdryer. Now I'm strengthening up, still using my number 12, because we want that particular wave that the surfer is on to be quite dark in most places, apart of course from the crashing wave that we'll do later. And once again, you can go over the surfer because he will be dark silhouetted so you don't have to be too careful about that. Then whilst that's wet, I'm laying in bands of waves coming in to the shore, and I've decided it's necessary to show a demarcation at the horizon level with a band of light color, helping to emphasize the various bands of waves. Do remember, if you do have too much pigment on your brush and too much water, you can just dab it with a tissue to take some off, as you see me do here and there, and I can shape up the waves accordingly. You lose control if you have too much water mixed with your pigment. Now I'm doing some lifting at the area where the sun is reflecting upon the surface of the ocean. I've got a flat brush. You can use something like a half size, 3/4 size, whatever you have available. As long as it's got a nice chisel edge to it, you lay down some clear water, have a nice clean tissue and lift. Then you get that feeling of the light of the sun catching the surface of the water. Also at the top of the waves, as they crest here and there, I've done some lifting as well. We're quite far through the painting, about 3/4 of the way through. I think you can have some fun with this. You of course can vary the colors that you choose. As with all my tutorials, it's the techniques that I hope I can impart to you in these tutorials, and then you use those techniques for your own masterpieces. So I think that's quite realistic now as a background, and we're doing the silhouette of the surfer. You can use something like a number 4 size brush. If you wish, you could go smaller if you want even more careful lines for detail. But quite simplistic, this silhouette of the surfer. Just think about the shapes of the body, of the arm, coming down, etc. to make it realistic. And as I continue down to the legs of the surfer, I just leave a little bit of a gap where the spray is coming up from the surfboard, rather than going down too far, so they sort of meld together. Now we're going to use the white and a bristle type brush. This is a Basting brush that I've just cut a few strands off either side to give me the shape I want, where I can show the splashing waves. As you know, I very rarely use white pigment in my paintings. I use the white of the paper as much as possible, as I've done for the sun, but on this occasion, to show more effectively the wave action and the spray taking place, I am using the white. Use it quite liberally, but know when to stop. You know, you can overdo it, but I think we've done just enough on this occasion. As it comes close to the shore, we've got a few sprays going on there as well, where the waves are crashing in. you can use an even smaller brush here and there, or tiny bits of spray just coming up here and there, shape it accordingly. We're a long way through the painting. I think you should have a go at this. It's a good one for beginners. You can learn a lot from it with your wet in wet, and it's easy since the surfer is a silhouette, not too much detail involved there. And here we are, the finished painting. I think you should have a go at that as a beginner. Hope you find it useful, and I look forward to seeing you next time.